That right there, that's how you introduce a game. Welcome to ULTRAKILL, a game that has been hooked into my brain for the last few weeks. Why do I want to talk about this, and why exactly has it been stuck in my mind? Well, it's probably something to do with how absolutely satisfying this is. Oh my God, I'm so sorry about that. I meant how satisfying this is. This game is fucking awesome, but it's not just the gameplay that draws me in. The game's lore, alongside how it handles its themes of violence and sin, and how well it all intertwines together, is why I want to cover this game. And trust me, it's worth it.
Limbo, lust, all gone, with gluttony soon to follow. Your kind know nothing but hunger, purged all life on the upper layers, and yet they remain unsatiated. As to you, you've taken everything from me, machine, and now all that remains is perfect hatred.
But for those of you who haven't actually played ULTRAKILL yet, first, why? Secondly, it's basically the unholy child of old school boomer shooters, like Quake, combined with games that encourage style-based action, like Devil May Cry, and the result is a game that takes the heights of both and elevates them to even greater heights than, in my humble opinion, either of those games ever reached. There's a reason that it seemed to create a renaissance of boomer shooters, with seemingly every indie dev trying to recreate the feeling that ULTRAKILL gives. Hakita and the rest of the New Blood team truly crafted a sensational experience. But for those who somehow don't know about ULTRAKILL, you play as V1, a robot designed to run entirely on blood. And well, the rest of humanity has gone extinct. For reasons that we will get into later. So of course, V1 ventures into Hell in order to acquire some lovely blood, as the selection on Earth is a bit dry. You know, with everyone dead. So we descend into the bowels of Hell, through demons and machines and even angels, as the game follows V1's journey throughout the circles of Hell. But what makes ULTRAKILL special isn't just the insanely satisfying gameplay, the god-tier soundtrack, or the breakneck speed at which everything happens, but instead how well the game and everything that happens in it mirrors the themes that the game is trying to portray. There's more to it than just blowing up demons. In this video, we're going to track V1's journey through these circles of Hell, from the somewhat calm beginning, all the way down to the latest area in the game, the Halls of Violence, while stopping to appreciate the absolutely insane boss fights. Trust me, you haven't lived until an angel with an oversized sword repeatedly screams at you about how insignificant you are. I'll share some thoughts on how ULTRAKILL handles its biblical themes, without ever feeling like it's preaching to you. And of course, I'll be sharing plenty of my own experiences, including the embarrassing numbers of times I died to certain bosses. Not looking at anyone in particular. But beyond all the blood and bullets, I think there's genuinely something special about the game. Something that kept me coming back even after my 100th death. Something that made me feel more alive while playing as a machine in Hell than I have in most games with human protagonists. But before we delve into the depths of ULTRAKILL's Hell, please consider liking and subscribing the video, especially if you enjoy what you see. If any support helps, honestly, and if you do want to see behind the scenes, like tweets and stuff, go follow the Twitter. And if you want to help the channel even more, consider either becoming a member of the channel or subscribing over on Patreon. Obviously, it's not needed, but it does help the channel significantly. So, thank you, and let us descend into ULTRAKILL's circles of Hell. So let's take this journey together, through the violence, the style, and maybe even find out something about ourselves along the way. After all, what are the sins of man, if not a mirror to our own souls? Mankind is dead, Blood is fuel. Hell is full. Our first stop in Hell is the Prelude, an aptly named section that serves as our tutorial. It seems to be somewhere that is only initially succumbing to the corruption of Hell, likely stemming from the fact that it was at first a mining facility that first breached into Hell, serving as humanity's first foray and experience with the damned denizens of the underworld. But enough of that for now. As we make our way through the abandoned mine, this is where the game begins, as we, V1, find ourselves in this mine, hitting our way through boarded up passages. I'm sure they weren't barricaded for any reason. Before finding our first weapon, the revolver. This is when the game goes from 0 to 60. I would say metaphorically, but the speeds you can achieve, I'm not quite sure it is. As the music blares and the game's logo appears, you can tell, this is it, you're in the game. Now fight. Unlike most games, ULTRAKILL doesn't really hold your hand. It throws you into the fire, quite literally. The game starts us off against basic enemies almost instantly, whilst teaching us the basic movement mechanics through necessity. You can dash, slide, and jump to get away from enemies, or more likely, chain bigger and better combos. But this is when the coolest and most iconic mechanic of the game comes into play. Healing via the literal blood of your enemies. In most games, you hide behind cover to heal. In ULTRAKILL, you bathe in the blood of your enemies. When I first played the game, the interplay of movement and healing, the moment I realized just how fun everything was when it slotted together. I was hooked. And oh boy, it only got worse the more I played. But after this is where ULTRAKILL starts showing its teeth. The arenas open up, the enemies start multiplying, and suddenly you realize that standing still for even a second is a death sentence. This level also introduces something that can completely change how you approach combat. The alternate fire modes. That's right, every weapon in ULTRAKILL has a secondary function that completely changes how you use it. The pistol initially can charge up for a piercing shot, but the real star of the show? Let me show you the exact moment I fell in love with this game. You can toss a coin into the air, shoot it, and the bullet ricochets right into an enemy's skull. The first time I pulled this off, I literally stood up from my chair. It's unnecessarily flashy, completely impractical in most situations, and absolutely the coolest thing I've ever done in an FPS. And the game rewards you for this kind of showing off, with the style music. Like Devil May Cry, every kill and combo adds to your score and rank. Get enough style points and you'll be seeing those sweet S ranks pop up on your screen. ULTRAKILL doesn't just want you to win, it wants you to look good while doing it. The best part about these alternate fire modes though, as you progress through the game, every single gun has not just a singular alternate fire mode, but two, unlocked through the terminal. The sheer variety is staggering. The next level is where ULTRAKILL stops throwing the easy enemies at you, introducing the schisms. These tall demons that shoot things at you, forces you to constantly be aware of your surroundings. They're not that bad, but they introduce you into the type of gameplay that ULTRAKILL is trying to acclimatize you to. But just when you think you've got them figured out, this metal nightmare charges at you with a sword bigger than your entire body. This swords machine is ULTRAKILL's way of saying, oh, you think you're getting comfortable? That's cute. My first encounter with the swords machine went something like this. Charge in confidently, get sliced in half, repeat about 15 times while increasingly creative profanities escape my mouth. But here's the thing, each time I died, I knew exactly why. The game hadn't really cheated me, I just wasn't good enough yet. The best thing about the swords machine is later on, in the later stages of the game, they get introduced as just regular ass enemies. Like, it really shows how much better you get as the game progresses. What's brilliant about these encounters is how they teach you to use every movement option at your disposal. You can't just dash away from a swords machine. You need to slide under its attack, use walls to gain height, and constantly reposition while keeping your aim steady. It's a brutal dance that punishes mistakes but feels incredibly rewarding when you pull it off. By the time you defeat Swords Machine and continue onwards, the training wheels are completely off. The arena's becoming more vertical, with multiple paths and approaches. The game starts throwing combinations of enemies at you that require on-the-fly strategizing. But this level is also where ULTRAKILL's secret areas start to shine, hidden behind breakable walls or accessible only through precise platforming. These secrets reward players who take the time to explore. Finding these hidden areas feels like ULTRAKILL is rewarding curiosity, not just skill. I spent almost as much time hunting for secrets as I did fighting, trying to uncover every last challenge room and hidden weapon variant. It's like the game is saying, hey, I know I'm trying to kill you, but check out this cool stuff I hid for you to find. The final level of the prelude introduces environmental hazards in the form of lava, because apparently regular hell wasn't deadly enough. But now you're not just avoiding enemies, you're avoiding the floor itself. And then you come to the Hubris. These massive featureless humanoids with stone-like skin. They sit there completely motionless, as if they're imitating that one Greek statue, contemplating these glowing yellow-orange balls that look suspiciously like apples, almost meditative, until they decide you're worthy of their attention. But these Guardians of Hell don't just guard the lava pools. They're actually standing watch near the infamous door bearing that quote from Dante's Inferno, "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here." How fitting. My first encounter with these stone giants went about as well as you'd expect. That innocent-looking orb, turns out it's their primary weapon, and they're surprisingly accurate with it. I spent more time dodging their projectiles than actually fighting back, all the while trying not to focus on the second one that pops up during the boss fight. But like everything in ULTRAKILL, the Hubris teach you something essential. In this case, how to prioritize threats. You're constantly calculating which enemies to take out first, where safe ground is, and how to maintain enough offensive pressure to keep your health up through blood collection. It's a deadly puzzle that changes with every encounter. As we pass through those gates, past the now deceased Hubris, we finally descend into actual hell. So, that was just the prelude. Essentially, ULTRAKILL's tutorial. Let that sink in for a second. If that was just the tutorial, what kind of madness awaits us in the actual game? As it turns out, quite a lot. Just when you think you've got a handle on things, ULTRAKILL decides it's time to get ready to really test your skills. Welcome to Limbo, the first circle of hell, where things get interesting. This is Limbo. Probably not quite what you were expecting. For somewhere that's meant to be our first introduction into hell proper, you were probably expecting more like fire and brimstone, damned souls screaming for eternity. Not exactly this serene, tranquil place that seems to greet us. But don't let the Windows XP-esque dreamscape fool you. Nothing here is real. The view of lush hills around you are just that, a view. A facade, designed as a form of false heaven for souls deemed too vile for salvation, but too pure for the horrors that await further below. But what makes this truly horrifying is the isolation of this place. Imagine having to spend all of eternity stranded here, aware that none of it was real, and that this is what will comprise the rest of all existence for you. You would be driven slowly mad by the artificial walls of this place. The existential nightmare is precisely what makes Limbo so brilliant as the first proper introduction to hell. It's not what you'd expect, it's something far more insidious. And as V1, a machine with no soul to torment, you get to experience this false paradise in a unique way, by tearing through it. As we venture deeper into Limbo, the serene facade initially holds. The path forward is suspiciously quiet, almost peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos of the prelude. This momentary calm feels almost welcome after the intensity we've experienced so far. But ULTRAKILL isn't a game that lets you breathe for long. The first part of Limbo presents itself with the same facade that we have already talked about. We carry on through it to be met with a suspicious lack of enemies. However, this is extremely short-lived, as we pick up a red skull, the equivalent of keys in hell because of course it is, and bring it to a pedestal of the corresponding color, opening up another path. Continuing on this path, the facade cracks as we are blocked from continuing until we dispatch some new enemies. The drones, flying robots that spit some form of bullets at us as we dash around the place. Alas, we continue after dispatching these enemies. We continue along the same pace for the rest of the level. Yada yada, we pick up the skull, yada yada, we kill the enemy. One remaining part of this level that I do want to discuss, however, is the nail gun, a weapon we pick up from some sort of flower bed. While not necessarily my favorite weapon, the nail gun is still an essential part of any prospective killer robot arsenal. It shoots, as I'm sure you can imagine, nails that embed themselves into enemies, and it comes with 2 alternate forms of fire, 2 that I used anyway. I know the saw blade is like a favorite of the ULTRAKILL community, but I never really used it that much. Being the first mode, which you can shoot magnets out of the gun that embed itself into both enemies and walls just as easily, that will attract the bullets to it. A tool I use religiously during most boss battles. And a second alternate fire, which unleashes a massive amount of nails after continually firing the weapon sustained for a while. I'm sure you can imagine the possibilities if you combine the 2 together. Navigating through Limbo's deceptively peaceful environments really showcases how ULTRAKILL's weapon system evolves with you. The nail gun is just one part of the deadly arsenal you build through these early circles. By this point, I was regularly switching between it and the shotgun I'd acquired back in the prelude after defeating Swords Machine. And Limbo is where I truly learned to master the shotgun's potential. The open spaces and multiple enemy encounters forced me to get creative. You see, the shotgun becomes something entirely different when paired with another essential mechanic I haven't mentioned yet: parrying. Parrying in ULTRAKILL is absurdly powerful. Need to stop a bullet hitting you? Just time a punch just before it hits, and it gets projected away from you with explosive force. But this doesn't just apply to enemy projectiles. It applies to 90% of the attacks in the game. Punches from enemies? Check. Massive glowing balls from the Cerberus? Check. A punch from a giant husk of a dead Okay, getting a bit ahead of myself there. But you get the point. But what makes the shotgun so effective is the fact that you can parry it as you shoot it, resulting in it turning out to be more like a portable mini nuke launcher from Fallout rather than just a shotgun. And honestly, I could solve most of my problems with the shotgun parry combo. Tough enemy? Parry shotgun blast into explosion. Instability in the Middle East? Parry that shotgun blast. Parents getting a divorce? Parry that shotgun blast into the divorce lawyer and then cry. Mossad breaking into your house for leaking classified Israeli intelligence? Actually, I don't think that it'll work for that one. Anyway, point being, this ship rocks. But back to the rest of the levels, and we'll blitz through the less relevant levels. We make our way through the rest of the mission, and on to the next one as we are introduced to our next enemy in a rather abrupt manner. After returning from inside a huge castle, we return to Limbo on fire. Flames adorn every surface, and we soon discover the perpetrator, the street cleaner. Robots armed with flamethrowers that, well, throw flames at you, with dogged determination. Honestly, they run around the field like extremely focused headless chickens, essentially on you the entire time you're on the floor. It forces you to stay always moving, in order to not feel the burning embrace of their weapons. Although the simple-minded chasing does make for some good targets for the shotgun nuke orbital strike that I am so fond of. But they don't stop us as we finish out the level and find ourselves into the next one, which we make record time with. However, this mission offers an interesting mechanic we haven't seen before. 2 alternate paths that both lead to unlocking the path forward towards the boss of the level. This comes in 2 forms. The outside path that possesses a distinct challenge, and inside that, well, doesn't. But I ain't no pussy, so I did both parts. Hoorah! Which brought us to the boss of the level, the hideous mass, a grotesque blob of flesh and metal that towers over you. This writhing monstrosity attacks by slamming its massive body around the arena, and sending out waves of smaller projectiles. It's essentially a mobile meat wall. That's what they called me in school. The fight against it reveals a key secret in ULTRAKILL. If you're struggling to kill something, try shooting it more. Pretend that you are the American military and this mass is a children's hospital in the Middle East, and blow that bitch up. Oh boy, I sure hope my children's hospital doesn't get leveled by the US military-industrial complex. This was not a political statement. I mean, back to the video. Or, alternatively, you can find the secret of the level, a bar of soap, and then punch it with it, which will instantly destruct it. Much like me in school also. But finally, we reach the final level, Clair de Lune. As you walk through the abandoned manor, Debussy's haunting piano piece echoes through empty halls. The moonlight filters through stained glass windows, casting colored shadows across marble floors. This serene beauty feels almost sacred, a final moment of deceptive peace before the inevitable confrontation. After placing the final skull upon its pedestal, the massive doors to the inner sanctum slowly open. Beyond them lies a cathedral-like chamber flanked by a stained glass window. A garden flourishes in the center, surrounded by pristine water that reflects the moonlight. For a moment, this feels like the true paradise that Limbo pretends to be. And then, the central stained glass window shatters violently. Shards of colored glass hang suspended in air. A silhouette breaks through. A machine identical to yourself, backlit by moonlight. V2 descends through the rain of glass, landing with force enough to ripple the water's surface. Time almost stands still as V2 rises, and then, with deliberate slowness, bows deeply before you. A mockery of respect, a gentleman's challenge before the bloodshed begins. The machine straightens, weapons ready, red eyes fixed directly on you. Standing before you is your equal, your reflection, your nemesis. Where every enemy before was merely an obstacle, V2 is a true rival. A machine built for the same purpose, with the same capabilities, the same thirst for blood. This isn't just another boss fight. This is a duel. The moment V2 rises from its bow, the fight begins, and immediately you realize this is unlike anything you've faced before. V2 doesn't just attack, it mirrors you. When you fire your revolver, it responds in kind. Try to close the distance with a shotgun blast? V2 is already sliding away, firing its own shotgun at precisely the angle needed to catch you mid-dash. There's something deeply unsettling about fighting an enemy that uses your own tactics against you. It's like playing chess against yourself, except with more explosions and a significantly higher chance of dying. My first attempt went about as well as you'd expect. I charged in confidently with my trusty shotgun parry combo, the same move that solved most of my problems up to this point, only to find V2 had already read the same playbook. It didn't even bother to parry, it just tanked the hit and then blitzed me with a speed I wasn't prepared for. Before I could even process what was happening, I was watching the death screen, wondering what truck just hit me. Oh boy, I sure hope I don't get hit by And that's when I realized, V2 is ULTRAKILL's way of testing if you actually learned how to play the game. It's not enough to have found a few tricks that work against standard enemies. V2 forces you to master the fundamentals. Movement, weapon switching, positioning, timing, because it can counter or simply power through any one-dimensional strategy. It's like playing 3 games of Call of Duty before having a bag put over your head, a parachute slapped on your back, and being chucked from a plane into Iraq to take down Saddam Hussein. It's a very clear escalation. And honestly, as a FromSoft fan, I was all for it. After my 10th death, who am I kidding, it was probably close to 20th, I started to adapt. I began mixing up my approaches, using the environment more effectively, and more importantly, being patient. The fight became this beautiful, chaotic dance, a deadly ballet where each of us was constantly trying to predict and counter the other's next move. When I finally landed that killing blow, pure euphoria. Not just because I beat a tough boss, but because I felt like I had genuinely improved as a player. V2 had pushed me to master systems I'd only dabbled in before. And in true ULTRAKILL fashion, my reward was both practical and darkly humorous. V2's severed arm, the Knuckle Blaster. Nothing says congratulations quite like ripping a limb off your defeated opponent and attaching it to yourself. With V2 vanquished and using the Knuckle Blaster to open up an area to the end of the mission, our journey through Limbo comes to an end. The false paradise had served its purpose, not just as the first circle of hell, but as the perfect training ground for the horrors that awaited below. And with that, we descend deeper into the crimson-soaked domain of lust. As we prepare to descend into lust, let me first tell you a story that might help you understand what awaits us below. Once upon a time, Lust wasn't the twisted hellscape we're about to enter. It was ruled by King Minos, a fair and just ruler who did something unthinkable in hell. He actually cared about the souls under his domain. Minos ushered in a renaissance of prosperity and civilization for Lust's inhabitants. He built structures, established order, and perhaps most damning in the eyes of heaven, he began freeing sinners from their divinely ordained punishment. This caught the attention of the council that now controlled heaven. They saw Minos' compassion as defiance against God's will. So they sent Gabriel, the most respected and feared archangel, to put an end to Minos' reign. A book hidden away in Lust tells the story. Gabriel struck Minos down without mercy, ignoring his attempts to reason, his pleas for understanding. As Minos fell, Gabriel simply declared, "Justice, the Lord's will be done." The residents of Lust watched in horror as their leader was slaughtered. But heaven wasn't done. They feared Minos' will was so strong it might manifest as a prime soul, something powerful enough to challenge them. So the angels imprisoned his soul within the flesh prison, a living cage of meat and machinery, and his corpse left behind to be animated by parasites, used as a puppet to tear down everything Minos had built. A cosmic insult to injury. So as we enter Lust, remember, you're walking into the aftermath of a tragedy, where a promising era ended because it dared to show mercy in a place designed for punishment, where rigid adherence to divine law trumped compassion. Welcome to Lust, where even hell's attempt at kindness was crushed by heaven's justice. As we emerge from Limbo's artificial paradise, the atmosphere shifts dramatically. Gone are the serene but hollow environments, replaced by a distinctly crimson-tinted landscape of crumbling infrastructure and neon-lit desolation. Lust is ULTRAKILL's take on the traditional Sin City concept, but with a twist. Rather than the hedonistic playground you might expect, it's a decaying metropolitan hellscape. The ruins of Minos' once prosperous civilization now stand as skeletal towers against the blood-red sky. Everything here feels simultaneously abandoned and alive with malice. Instead of a sprawling land of vice and sin a la Vegas, we are more struck with the equivalent of a Ubisoft open world, empty and left to rot. The level design takes us through towering bridges, electrical infrastructures, abandoned subway stations, and even a derelict train that becomes the setting of our confrontation with the corpse of King Minos. Every step is a reminder of what was lost when Gabriel forcibly ended Minos' reign. The first thing that surprised me about Lust was the verticality. The first level has you traversing these massive suspended platforms where a single misstep means a long fall. It was quite an amazing experience coming out to these massive suspended bridges as the city's sprawling megalopolis sat far below us. It's disorientating in the best way possible, forcing you to think three-dimensionally while combat grows more intense. The bounce pads introduced here become essential for both movement and combat strategy. But one of the best parts of Lust is when it introduces the rail cannon, a weapon that feels perfectly suited to this layer's mechanical industrial vibe. The rail cannon is like giving a starving Victorian child access to the US military-industrial complex, and it rocks. Shooting this thing is like having unrestricted access to the Death Star laser, and it's truly amazing. The level's semi-open environments with interconnected electrical boxes was when I first realized just how much the game rewards exploration. The rush of finding new paths through these hostile city blocks feels like urban exploration, if urban exploration involved dismembering dozens of enemies along the way. But moving on to the next mission, we get introduced to our next enemy. The Mind Flayer, the baddie, what? Floats around blasting you with the power of 1,000 electrical substations, while teleporting around you like an undeveloped, brain-rotten child. So to say, they're slightly annoying. But regardless, we continue through the hydroelectric plants that make up the rest of this level, as it creates these moments of underwater traversal that break up the pace and provide these brief tense moments of vulnerability. But nothing in Lust prepares you for the court of the Corpse King. As you descend into that abandoned subway station, there's this mounting dread as you realize what awaits. And then, that massive hand breaks through the wall. The fight against the corpse of King Minos is ULTRAKILL's first truly epic boss encounter. This massive, parasitically controlled husk of the once noble ruler swings at you with desperate rage, and the confined space of the train station makes every dodge critical. What makes this particular fight haunting is knowing that somewhere inside that monstrous form is the consciousness of a ruler who only wanted to help his people. When you finally defeat him and step through the gaping maw into gluttony, there's this perfect sense of having passed through something significant. Not just a boss fight, but a tragic chapter in Hell's history. Lust teaches you that in ULTRAKILL's Hell, even attempts at redemption are punished. It sets up the reoccurring theme that heaven might not be as benevolent as traditional theology suggests. A theme that becomes increasingly important as we progress deeper. As you step through the maw of the fallen king, the fleshy walls of gluttony close around you, and lust, with all its fallen grandeur, is left behind. The mechanical and industrial hellscapes give way to something far more organic. Welcome to gluttony, where everything is wet, fleshy, and constantly pulsating. If lust was Hell's twisted version of Metropolis, then gluttony is its grotesque digestive system. The transition couldn't be more literal. You're literally being swallowed by Hell itself as you pass through Minos' mouth. The atmosphere here is completely different from anything we've experienced so far. Gone are the artificial environments of Limbo and the decaying infrastructure of lust. Instead, everything is made of living tissues. Floors squish beneath your feet, walls throb with unseen heartbeats, and pools of acid burn through anything unfortunate enough to fall in. This is where ULTRAKILL really leans into its body horror elements. Every surface looks like it was ripped straight from a medical textbook or a David Cronenberg film. It's simultaneously disgusting and fascinating how the game transforms biological imagery into level design. And speaking of design, Gluttony introduces some of the most challenging platforming sections yet. Trying to navigate precise jumps across pools of corrosive acid while Cerberus lob projectiles at you is enough to make anyone's blood pressure spike. And don't even get me started on those bone stairways that seem specifically designed to make you slide off into the abyss below. But as challenging as the environment is, it's just setting the stage for our next major encounter. The final level of Gluttony, In the Flesh, builds an incredible sense of anticipation. As we make our way through fleshy corridors and pulsating chambers, ominous organ music grows louder with each step. The level design funnels us towards what feels like an inevitable confrontation.
Machine, turn back now. The layers of this palace are not for your kind. Turn back, or you will be crossing the will of God. Your choice is made. As the righteous hand of the Father, I shall rend you apart, and you will become inanimate once more.
And then we finally see it. A massive heart chamber, with the organ itself throbbing rhythmically in the background. The room is bathed in an eerie red glow, with the organ music reaching its crescendo as we enter the arena. The chamber stands empty, apart from the pulsating viscera that is spread throughout. This all shatters in an instant, a beam of light slamming down from the heavens. The organ music stopping as the kick-ass soundtrack kicks in, as Gabriel in all his splendor makes his appearance, screaming at us, and the fight that follows is, well, biblical. And holy shit does Gabriel come at you like you personally stole his lunch money. No warm-up, no starter phase, just immediate teleporting sword combos that make the Doomslayer look like he's moving in slow motion. My first attempt lasted approximately 7.5 seconds, which I think might be a personal record for fastest boss fight failure. But Gabriel doesn't just attack, he gives a whole ass TED talk while trying to cut you into machine parts.
You are less than nothing.
He bellows while sending a wave of energy that covers 90% of the arena. Thanks for the heads up, Gabe, but could you maybe turn down the light a bit? Some of us are trying to survive here. What makes this fight so brilliant is how it forces us to use everything we've learned so far. All those techniques we've been developing, the weapon switching, the dashing, the parrying, suddenly come together in this beautiful chaotic dance. It's like a final exam for all the skills you've been building, except the professor is actively trying to murder you. It's very reminiscent of the first V2 fight, except ramped up to 11. There's this moment, maybe 30 seconds in, when you realize you're not just surviving Gabriel's attacks anymore, but actively keeping pace with an archangel. It's like that scene in every action movie where the protagonist finally matches the villain blow for blow, and you can't help but feel like a total badass. Right before he hits you with a sword combo you definitely didn't see in the tutorial. When Gabriel enters his second phase, the music changes and the entire arena lights up. It's like someone flipped the switch from Angry Angel to Biblical Wrath. His attacks become even more aggressive, with projectiles flying from every direction. I'm pretty sure at one point he was attacking from the past, future, and several parallel dimensions simultaneously.
You are outclassed!
He shouts, while seemingly trying to recreate the Big Bang with his swords. Cool concept, Gabe, but could we maybe take this outside? This heart chamber isn't exactly built for cosmic recreation. It's during this phase that Gabriel's character really shines through. His voice lines express a genuine belief that he's doing God's work by eliminating us. He's not simply evil, but zealously committed to what he sees as justice. Which, you know, would be admirable if it wasn't directed at turning us into scrap metal. By the end, the fight becomes this incredible rhythm of attack and counterattack. Every successful parry, every well-timed dash feels like you're speaking Gabriel's language of combat. And when you finally land that killing blow, there's this perfect moment of silence. A beat where both you and Gabriel seem equally surprised that a machine just went toe-to-toe with heaven's greatest warrior. When we finally defeat Gabriel, he doesn't die. Instead, he retreats, shocked that a mere machine could stand against him. This isn't just a boss victory, it's a pivotal moment in the story. Gabriel's defeat marks the end of Act 1, although this is merely a gateway to much bigger things. The confrontation with Gabriel elevated ULTRAKILL from just another boomer shooter with great mechanics to becoming something with genuine narrative depth. Suddenly, the religious imagery and biblical references that permeated the game took on new meaning. We weren't just slaughtering demons for fun. We were part of a complex conflict between heaven, hell, and the machines caught in between. With Gabriel vanquished, we leave gluttony behind, ready to descend into greed, and the beginning of Act 2. But the angel's parting words hang in the air.
This is not over!
And we know, somehow, that our paths will cross again. After defeating Gabriel and finishing the mission, instead of progressing us to the next level like normal, it instead brings us to a visual novel-like screen of Gabriel's internal monologue after getting turned into Swiss cheese by a mechanized toaster. He laments about his humiliation at the hands of an inanimate object, as he is brought before the Council of Heaven. He sits kneeling, bathed in light, as the Council of Heaven admonishes him for his failures, before forcibly ripping the light of the Father out of him. As someone who would lose to a mere machine cannot be worthy of the blessing, before casting him out of heaven. Not before being told that he is now the equivalent of a suspicious-looking abandoned car in Ulster in the 90s, i.e. having 24 hours remaining before he perishes from the removal of the light. With his remaining time, he vows to find and destroy V1, for making him look like a beta soy cock in front of the council. I'm sorry. But before we continue, I feel we should establish some lore that will hopefully help you understand what is actually going on. At least some of it, and if not right now, hopefully it will eventually. Basically, just like my dad after learning that I watch anime, God has disappeared. The reasons are obscure. Perhaps he's afraid of what he's made, perhaps he got bored, or perhaps he looked at Reddit for 0.1 seconds. But regardless, point is, God is gone. In his place, a council has been convened in heaven that rules in his absence. And that's what we saw judging Gabriel for his inability to stop the Roomba on Adderall. And their ability to seemingly withdraw the grace of God at will speaks to having at least some sort of official power. But we will get into it properly later on. For now, all you really need to know is that God noped the fuck out of the place. And we don't really know why. Before we descend into Act 2 properly, I want to talk about P1. But before I dive into it itself, Let me explain what it takes to even access this secret level, because ULTRAKILL doesn't just hand this experience to anyone who happens to wander by. This is the game's ultimate challenge, reserved for only the most dedicated players. To unlock P1, you need to achieve a perfect rank on every single level in both the Prelude and Act 1. And when I say perfect, I mean capital P perfect. Getting S ranks in style, kills, and time, all the while never dying once in the entire level. No checkpoints, no second chances, one slip up and you have to restart from the beginning. You also need to find and complete all the secret levels, which are hidden challenges tucked away in otherwise normal missions. Each main layer of hell has one secret level, and finding them is often a puzzle in itself. Something wicked hidden in the meat grinder puts you in a pitch black environment with only a flashlight and 2 skulls for illumination. You're being hunted by an unstoppable entity that kills you instantly on contact. It's pure survival horror in a game known for fast-paced action. And the contrast is brilliant. I still get chills thinking about that thing's creepy whisper when it spotted me. The Witless, accessible from Heart of the Sunrise, completely shifts genres into a puzzle game inspired by, well, The Witness. Instead of shooting demons, you're solving increasingly complex grid puzzles that require serious mental gymnastics. It's basically the game saying, oh, you thought you only needed quick reflexes? Let's see how that brain of yours works. And then there's All in Perfect Love Song in the Lust layer, which starts as what seems like a visual novel dating sim before spiraling into this existential nightmare that I'm still not entirely sure I understand. It's like David Lynch directed a romance game. Bizarre, but unforgettable. Completing all of these wildly different experiences, plus getting perfect ranks on every main level. That's what it takes to access P1. It's ULTRAKILL asking, are you really sure you've learned everything the game has to teach you? And only when you've proven yourself through perfect execution across hours of gameplay does the path forward reveal itself. Once you've achieved this feat, a hidden door in the belly of the beast slowly rumbles open, revealing a dark passage that wasn't there before. It's a brilliantly subtle reward. No fanfare, no congratulations, just a new challenge awaiting silently for those skilled enough to find it. P1 begins with this incredibly unsettling descent down what appears to be a massive spinal column, spiraling down into darkness. The atmosphere is tense, with this distorted version of the music from Court of the Corpse King playing in the background. It's a brilliant piece of level design. There are no enemies, no combat, just this long descent that gives you plenty of time to regret your life choices. At the bottom of this biological nightmare staircase, we enter a fleshy arena and meet the Flesh Prison, a pulsating biomechanical cube that immediately made me think, yep, that's definitely something that wants to kill me. And boy, was I right. The Flesh Prison isn't just a boss, however. It's a gatekeeper. Its entire purpose is to contain something far worse, and it's not going down without a fight. It shoots projectiles in these maddening patterns, summons enemies to distract you, and generally makes your life miserable in every possible way. My first attempt against it went about as well as bringing a pool noodle to a gunfight. Those projectile patterns are no joke. They cover the entire arena in these overlapping waves that seem specifically designed to make you panic dash directly into another bullet. But the Flesh Prison is just the opening act. When you finally defeat it, the cube cracks open with a sound that's somewhere between breaking glass and tearing flesh. The arena dims momentarily, and then a blinding light erupts from within the shattered prison. The music shifts dramatically as a figure materializes in the center of the arena, tall, regal, and radiating pure power.
Now dawns thy reckoning, and thy gore shall glisten before the temples of man. Creature of steel, my gratitude upon thee for my freedom. But the crimes thy kind have committed against humanity are not forgotten, and thy punishment is death.
This is Minos Prime, not the parasitically controlled corpse we fought before, but the pure concentrated will of the king himself, manifested in a prime soul. His voice echoes through the chamber, a deep resonance that seems to come from everywhere at once. He pauses, sizing you up, with eyes that burn with both judgment and fury. Death. And with that declaration, he launches forward with impossible speed, the true battle beginning in earnest. The battle starts out rough, with this millennium-old crackhead jumping around on speed. Eventually, you start to recognize the patterns. But finally, you manage to hit the killing blow after what seems like countless attempts. As Minos freezes in midair, he dissolves into light, and there's a strange sense of earned respect between warrior and judge. P1 represents everything I love about ULTRAKILL. It's challenging, sure, but it's fair, visually distinctive, and adds to the lore in meaningful ways. It reveals that Minos wasn't just some passive ruler. His will was so strong that heaven had to take special precautions to contain it even after his death. That speaks volumes about who he was in life, and makes his fate all the more tragic. With P1 conquered after more attempts than I care to admit, we're finally ready to move on to Act 2, where new challenges and an increasingly conflicted Gabriel await us in the depths below us, starting with greed. After defeating Gabriel at the end of Gluttony, our journey takes us deeper into hell, to the greed layer. The first thing that hits you is the stark visual contrast from what we've seen before. Gone are the fleshy corridors of gluttony and the crimson halls of lust. Instead, we're greeted with vast golden dunes stretching out beneath a blistering sun, with a massive pyramid looming in the distance. But don't let the shiny appearance fool you. This gold isn't your friend. Touch those beautiful golden sands, and you'll immediately be hurt. I learned this the hard way, repeatedly, as I watched my health melt away faster than ice cream in August. It's a perfect metaphor for greed itself. Alluring and beautiful from a distance, but ultimately harmful when pursued. The greed layer introduces some of the most frustrating, and I mean that in the best way possible, enemies that we've encountered so far. The virtues, these angelic assholes, blast you with the iron cannon from Tiberian Wars, forcing you to deal with them first or you'll feel the burn. And then there are the stalkers, husks that carry around detonating canisters that explode and coat enemies in sand, preventing them from bleeding and healing you. Nothing quite says welcome to greed, quite like enemies specifically designed to deny you resources. But the real star of the show is the Sisyphean insurrectionist. This massive husk that makes the hideous mass look like a cuddly stuffed animal. Named after King Sisyphus himself, this behemoth crashes through the level with devastating impact. According to the lore we find scattered throughout the layer, Sisyphus was a rebellious leader who amassed an army of husks to overthrow heaven's control of hell. During a period when angels were absent, he began his insurrection, but ultimately was defeated when Gabriel returned with a heavenly army. The insurrectionists we fight are the remnants of this failed rebellion, still carrying their burdens up and down the dunes. A fitting punishment that mirrors the Greek myth, where Sisyphus was condemned to eternally roll a boulder up a hill. My first encounter with one of these insurrectionists went about as well as you'd expect. It charged at me, I panicked, and suddenly I was watching the death screen, wondering what truck had just hit me. What makes these enemies particularly memorable is how they carry around dead malicious faces. A clever visual reference to the boulder from the original Sisyphean myth, but reimagined in ULTRAKILL's uniquely violent way. These hulking husks lug around the weight of their eternal punishment, but instead of a boulder, it's the face of a demonic machine. The environmental storytelling in this layer is particularly brilliant. As you navigate the dunes, you'll find familiar landmarks from Earth. The Statue of Liberty, Big Ben, the Eiffel Tower, all half buried in gold. It's a haunting reminder of humanity's fallen civilizations, swallowed by the very wealth that they coveted. If you look closely at the Statue of Liberty, you can even hear a heartbeat inside of it. A small but unsettling detail that adds to the layer's eerie atmosphere. As we make our way through the layer, fighting through golden temples and sand-swept ruins, all paths lead to that imposing pyramid in the distance. Finally reaching its entrance, we ascend through its interior. A network of grand halls and ornate chambers that speak to unimaginable wealth, all protected by increasingly difficult enemies. At the heart of the pyramid sits a throne room bathed in golden light, and there, waiting for us, is a familiar silhouette. V2, our mechanical doppelganger, lounging on the throne like it's been expecting us all along. Between us lies a perfectly symmetrical chamber with 4 pillars, an area designed for our inevitable confrontation. Our eyes meet across the gilded chamber. A moment of recognition, a silent acknowledgement that only one of us will leave. V2 rises slowly from the throne, the air around us growing heavy with tension. With mechanical precision, it cracks its neck to the left, then to the right, followed by popping each of its knuckles. An unsettling display of human-like behavior that serves as its only acknowledgement before the carnage begins. V2 has evolved since our first encounter in Limbo. It's faster, more aggressive now, seemingly desperate. The most fascinating part is how V2 seems to learn. Each strategy works briefly before it adapts, turning the fight into this deadly puzzle that keeps evolving. And just when you think you've got the upper hand, this happens. The fight seamlessly transitions to the pyramid's exterior, completely changing the dynamics of combat. Suddenly, we're both sliding down the side of the pyramid under the burning sun. The golden dunes below stretch out endlessly as we trade fire at breakneck speed. There's no stopping, no cover, no respite. Just a vertical battlefield with the constant pull of gravity forcing us ever downward. The wind whistles past as coins and bullets cut through the air between us, each shot potentially fatal at this velocity. I remember frantically trying to aim while sliding, desperately parrying V2's projectiles even as I launched my own. Every successful hit sent a spray of blood arcing through the air, glittering like rubies against the golden surface of the pyramid. The entire sequence lasts maybe 30 seconds, but it feels like an eternity. A perfect climactic moment that encapsulates everything that makes ULTRAKILL's combat so uniquely thrilling. With a final desperate barrage, I land the killing blow. As we land on the platform at the bottom of the pyramid, V2's body lands directly in front of us, exploding into a cloud of blood, and all it leaves behind is an arm. The machine that once mirrored my every move now lies broken and defeated. As we approach the wreckage, we find our prize among the twisted metal. V2's arm, the whiplash. I pick it up and, without hesitation, attach it to my own frame. The integration is immediate, as if this part was always meant to be mine. The whiplash isn't just another weapon. It fundamentally changes how you navigate the game moving forward. Suddenly, I can grapple onto enemies, yank them towards me for devastating close-range attacks, or use environmental hook points to reach new heights and cross vast gaps. It's like the game suddenly remembered it wanted to be Spider-Man mixed with Doom. And honestly, I'm not complaining. What's particularly satisfying about this victory is how it represents V1's evolution. Our first encounter with V2 in Limbo ended with us claiming the Knuckle Blaster. Now, deeper in hell, we take the Whiplash. Each defeat of our doppelganger making us stronger, more versatile, and more deadly. It's a perfect gameplay representation of V1's journey through hell, absorbing the power of its enemies, becoming ever more formidable. The greed layer perfectly embodies its namesake sin. Everything glitters, everything tempts, and everything hurts. It's a golden hell, where wealth itself becomes the instrument of torture. And as we leave it behind for the watery depths of wrath, I can't help but feel we've only scratched the surface of how creative hell's punishments can get. After leaving the gleaming dunes of greed behind, our next stop is the wrath layer. If you thought hell couldn't get any more creative with its punishments, you were sorely mistaken. Wrath is submerged beneath the ocean Styx. What was once just a river in mythology has severely flooded since humanity's extinction. One of the most striking locations in this layer is the massive cruise ship that's been raised from the depths. The ferry. This colossal vessel dominates the waterscape, and at its helm stands the ferryman, a hooded figure inspired by Charon from Greek mythology. Unlike most enemies that attack on sight, the ferryman initially just stands there, silently praying. You can either fight him for the challenge, or if you manage to read his journal, you can flip him a coin and he'll allow you entry into the ferry. This diary, found within one of the cabins, provides fascinating insight into Hell's lore, including mentions of Gabriel, who apparently saved the ferryman's life at some point. Speaking of new gameplay elements, Wrath is where the whiplash really comes into its own. The layer is designed with numerous hook points that let you zip across watery gaps and reach elevated areas. It completely transforms the movement system, making the combat more vertical and dynamic than ever before. But these aren't just the only new gameplay elements, namely being the aforementioned idols, which now present another gameplay challenge. They exist as stationary objects that provide enemies with immortality until they're hit with a melee attack, introducing another layer into ULTRAKILL's already convoluted combat. The levels in Wrath have a brilliant sense of progression to them. In the Wake of Poseidon has you exploring flooded underground caverns and facilities. Waves of the Starless Sea take you to above the sea level, with an eerie lighthouse in the distance, and eventually to the ferryman's massive ship. And Ship of Fools puts you aboard that same vessel for the proper exploration, only for it to suddenly flip upside down halfway through, forcing you to navigate the same areas but completely inverted and flooded. The creativity of these level designs showcases just how much thought goes into making each area of Hell distinct and also memorable. The tension builds throughout the layer until you reach the final mission, Leviathan. As the name suggests, you face off against a massive sea monster that makes the previous bosses look like plushies in comparison. The fight takes place on a small boat in the middle of the ocean Styx during a thunderstorm, when the Leviathan thirst erupts from the water, dwarfing your tiny vessel. It's one of the most jaw-dropping moments in the entire game. The fight itself is divided into two phases. In the first, you battle the beast as it circles your boat, launching projectiles and occasionally charging at you. Then, in a moment of pure video game spectacle, it destroys your tiny boat entirely, creating a circular arena out of its own massive body coiled around you. Fighting on the beast itself while thunder crashes and lightning illuminates its enormous form is peak ULTRAKILL. Ridiculous, over the top, and absolutely thrilling. After defeating the Leviathan, the waters part to reveal the exit leading to the Heresy layer. But before we move on, I have to mention one of the most unexpected secrets in the game, the fishing minigame. Hidden within Wrath is a peaceful island where V1 can go fishing. It's such a bizarre tonal shift from the violence that dominates the rest of the game, but somehow it works perfectly. There's something hilarious about this blood-fueled killing machine taking time out of its murderous rampage to go catch some fish. The Wrath layer overall exemplifies how ULTRAKILL constantly reinvents itself with each new area. What started as a straightforward retro FPS continues to evolve, adding new mechanics, enemies, and environmental storytelling techniques that keep the experience fresh, even dozens of hours in. And as we leave the flooded realm of Wrath behind, it's clear that Hell still has plenty more surprises in store. If you thought the previous layers of Hell were intense, Heresy is where ULTRAKILL transforms from merely being an excellent shooter to something truly special. The moment you step into this layer, you're enveloped in a persistent blood-red glow that saturates everything. Walls, floors, enemies, even the air itself seems to pulse with crimson energy. The omnipresent red creates an atmosphere that's simultaneously beautiful and suffocating, like you're walking through the veins of some colossal being. Heresy in Dante's Inferno represented those who denied religious dogma or held beliefs contrary to church teachings, and ULTRAKILL leans heavily into this theme. The architecture shifts dramatically to elaborate cathedral-like structures featuring twisted religious iconography. Stained glass windows depicting unknown figures, altars dripping with blood, crucifixes inverted and malformed. Coffins burn eternally in the corners of the rooms, and if you listen closely, you can hear agonized screams emanating from within them. It's a masterclass in environmental storytelling that communicates volumes without explicit exposition. The city of Dis, as this part of hell is known, stands out with its distinctive blood-red atmosphere that saturates everything. The architecture here is deliberately imposing. Towering spires, massive chambers with high ceilings, and narrow corridors that suddenly open into multi-tiered arenas. Everything is bathed in that persistent crimson glow, creating an atmosphere that's both beautiful and oppressive. The religious themes are unmistakable, perfectly complementing the layer's true focus on heresy against God and established doctrine. Combat difficulty takes a significant leap here too, pushing your mastery of ULTRAKILL systems to their limits. Sword machines, which were previously intimidating boss enemies, now appear as regular foes, charging at you with reckless abandon. Multiple hideous masses attack simultaneously, forcing you to prioritize targets while maintaining constant awareness of your surroundings. The first layer, Cry for the Weeper, is aptly named, a descent into increasingly challenging combat scenarios that culminate in a battle against two hideous masses simultaneously. The level design is labyrinthine, with tight corridors suddenly opening into multi-tiered arenas that demand vertical thinking and creative use of the whiplash. The difficulty curve is steep but fair, preparing you for what comes next. And what comes next is nothing short of extraordinary. Aesthetics of Hate begins with a long approach through a massive cathedral.
Limbo, lust, all gone, with gluttony soon to follow. Your kind know nothing but hunger, purged all life on the upper layers, and yet they remain unsatiated. As to you, you've taken everything from me, machine, and now all that remains is perfect hatred.
The ceiling soars impossibly high above, supported by towering columns that stretch into darkness. Stained glass windows line the walls, depicting scenes of divine judgment and angelic wrath. At the far end, bathed in a spotlight that cuts through the crimson gloom, stands a massive pipe organ. And there, fingers dancing across the keys, is Gabriel, the judge of hell, the will of God himself. His armor gleams white and gold against the red backdrop, ornate pauldrons, gauntlets, and greaves, all meticulously crafted. His helmet, with its distinctive golden cross and breathing holes, conceals his face, but can't hide the intensity of his presence. Behind him, translucent blue wings glow softly, and a halo shaped like an arrowhead hovers just above his head, inscribed with unreadable markings. This is an angel in his full, terrifying glory. The music he plays is both beautiful and ominous, a perfect accompaniment to this moment of calm before the inevitable storm. As you approach, the music gradually slows, then stops with a discordant slam as Gabriel acknowledges your presence.
Machine, I will cut you down, break you apart, splay the gore of your profane form across the stars. I will grind you down until the very sparks cry for mercy. My hands shall relish ending you here and now!
The lights dim one by one, emphasizing his figure as he rises from the organ bench. The word echoes through the cathedral like thunder. Gabriel's voice resonates with righteous fury as he towers above you, his angelic form illuminated from behind, creating a halo effect that contrasts sharply with the hatred in his words. His wings unfurl to their full, magnificent span, and his eyes begin to glow with inner fire. The air around him shimmers with heat as he draws his twin swords. No longer the single blade from your first encounter, but two massive flaming weapons that leave trails of light as they cut through the air. With the final word, Gabriel lunges forward, initiating a battle that redefines what you thought ULTRAKILL's combat could be. Gabriel begins this fight already in an enraged state, a stark contrast to the composed cold fury of your first encounter. His dual swords slice through the air with wild intensity, leaving trails as he unleashes attacks that cover nearly the entire arena. His teleportation is relentless now, appearing behind you just when you think you've found safety. Every movement requires split-second reaction time. Notice how the environment itself shifts during the battle. The arena transforming from blood red to ethereal blue after you deplete his first health meter, creating this stunning visual contrast against the crimson background. This fight demands everything you've learned. Weapon switching, parrying, mobility, and perfect positioning. No single approach works for long. Watch his movements become more desperate as the fight progresses. Less calculated, more frenzied. His voice even begins to crack with rage and surprisingly fear. Then that perfect moment of stillness after that final hit. Gabriel on his back, wings drooping, swords fallen. The sudden silence makes the victory feel truly earned. This moment of quiet is powerful, a stark contrast to the chaos of the battle that preceded it.
I've never known such relief. I need some time to think. We will meet again, machine. May your woes be many.
Gabriel doesn't die. Instead, he teleports away, leaving you alone in the now silent cathedral. The organ rises, revealing a passage that leads to the next layer of hell. Violence. But the story doesn't end there. A cutscene plays after completing this level, showing us Gabriel's aftermath. We see him sitting alone by a campfire on a ruined earth, his form surprisingly intact despite the punishment we inflicted upon him. He stares into the flames, questioning everything he believed in. The angel who once proclaimed God's judgment with absolute certainty now grapples with doubt. Gabriel sits in silence by the dying campfire, finally allowing himself the introspection he's avoided for so long. How many had he killed? Had he ever thought to count? How much cruelty did he embody? And to what end? How many did he condemn to hell? And who did it truly benefit? 2 defeats at the hands of the machine had fundamentally changed him. The world of the supposed will of God now lay shattered, and only he remained to confront the truth. The pieces never fit together to begin with. The council that boasted of a god who wasn't there had twisted his memory, warped his will, while heaven's aimless masses followed blindly. The angels continued to act in the Father's name, but his kingdom had changed beyond recognition. As the campfire dies, spluttering out without fresh fuel, Gabriel stares into the embers with perfect clarity. He draws his blade, holding it against the dying light, seeing in its reflection a weapon reborn, no longer wielded by another's will, but his own. He knows words alone would never sway the masses. He must do something drastic. Gabriel returns to heaven, to the council chambers where the self-appointed rulers sit. What follows is perhaps the most shocking moment in the game's narrative. Gabriel slaughters every single one of them, holding up a severed council member's head before the gathered angels. He forces heaven to confront the corruption that had festered in God's absence. Gabriel understands the consequences. Cut off from the light of the Father, and now a rebel against heaven itself, he has only hours to live. In his final act of defiance, he chooses to spend his remaining time in hell, the very realm he once judged in God's name. His transformation is complete. From the judge of hell and will of God, to the apostate of hate, a fallen angel who finally acted on the truth he'd always known. If you thought the regular levels of ULTRAKILL were challenging, the Prime Sanctums are where Hikita decided to test the absolute limits of player skill. P2, or Weight of the World, is accessed through a hidden door in Aesthetics of Hate that only reveals itself when you've P-ranked every level in Act 2, much like P1. And let me tell you, this level is absolutely diabolical. The moment you step through that door, you're greeted with a blood-red cityscape. The downtown of Dees, the same as the rest of Heresy. Rain falls constantly, but it's not water, it's blood, coating every surface in a crimson sheen. This architecture is a twisted mix of cathedral spires and industrial infrastructure, all designed to disorientate and confound. What makes P2 particularly memorable is its absolutely relentless enemy encounters. The very first room, affectionately dubbed the Weezer Room by the community due to the formation of 4 Cerberus arranged like the band's album cover, immediately sets the tone. It's a tiny space where you're forced to dodge massive projectiles while dealing with a ferryman that teleports behind you when you're not looking. But the real stroke of evil genius comes in the arena design. Nearly every encounter features idols, those angelic statues that bless enemies with invincibility, placed in unreachable glass cases. This forces you to fight through waves of enemies while certain foes remain completely invulnerable, until the precise moment the designers decide you're allowed to attack them. One standout section involves 2 mind flayers blessed by idols in glass cases, constantly harassing you with projectiles while you battle other enemies. Only after killing everything else do the cases open, finally allowing you to destroy the idols and take out the fucking annoying ass mind flayers. It's a masterclass in controlled frustration, pushing you to the edge of what seems possible without quite crossing into unfair territory. The level's final section takes you down an elevator into a mysterious facility. As you descend deeper into the darkness, the blood rain finally stops. The atmosphere shifts from chaotic to ominous, the calm before the ultimate storm. You are led through a sterile corridor with screens displaying cryptic warnings before reaching a massive door. A simple terminal gives you a choice: proceed or turn back. There is, of course, only one real option. Inside lies the Panopticon Sanctum, a vast octagonal chamber lined with red doors reminiscent of the Heresy layer. In the center floats the Flesh Panopticon, a grotesque evolution of the Flesh prison from P1. This isn't just a tougher boss, it's a prison specifically designed to contain the soul of one of Hell's most dangerous rebels, King Sisyphus. According to lore scattered throughout the Greed layer, Sisyphus was a charismatic leader who organized a massive rebellion against Heaven's control of Hell. Unlike King Minos, who attempted peaceful reform in lust, Sisyphus knew that only violence could overthrow their celestial oppressors. During a period when angels were absent from Hell, he amassed an army of husks called the Sisyphean Insurrectionists, recruiting any husks intelligent enough to join his cause. What makes Sisyphus particularly compelling is how he contrasts with Minos. While Minos was gentle and noble, advocating for civil discussion, Sisyphus was cunning and pragmatic, willing to lie, cheat, or kill to protect his comrades. This fundamental difference in approach reflects 2 philosophies of resistance against oppression: pacifism versus violent revolution. When the Heavenly Council re-established control of Heaven, they sent Gabriel to crush the insurrection. Gabriel recognized Sisyphus' charisma and how his army depended on his leadership, so he ordered a focused assault on Sisyphus himself. Gabriel beheaded the rebel king, displaying his head for all to see, which completely broke the morale of Sisyphus' army. Without their leader, the insurrectionists were easily defeated. But here's the brilliant part: Sisyphus knew he couldn't win. He was well aware that his rebellion stood no chance against the full might of Heaven. Yet he fought with everything he had anyway. To him, the act of resistance itself, despite certain failure, was the ultimate defiance. As his terminal data poignantly states, one must imagine Sisyphus happy, a direct reference to Albert Camus's essay The Myth of Sisyphus and his philosophy of absurdism. But as the battle begins and we fight the Flesh Panopticon, the battle changes drastically as we don't actually defeat the Flesh Panopticon ourselves. As the fight progresses and we damage the mechanical prison, it suddenly shivers violently. The Panopticon begins to crack, not from our attacks, but from something breaking out from within. The arena trembles as fissures spread across the prison surface. With a thunderous explosion, the Flesh Panopticon is torn apart from the inside. Its pieces scatter across the chamber, crashing against the walls with echoing impacts.
Indeed, I have slept long enough. The kingdom of heaven has long since forgotten my name, and I am eager to make them remember. However, the blood of Minos stains your hands, and I must admit, I'm curious about your skills, weapon. And so, before I tear down the cities and crush the armies of heaven, you shall do as an appetizer. Come forth, child of man, and die.
As Sisyphus Prime fully materializes, the room transforms. The walls seem to pulse with energy, the lighting shifts to highlight his imposing figure. His presence communicates everything: determination, rage, and an unbreakable will. Sisyphus Prime erupts into battle with earth-shattering force. His massive frame moves with impossible speed, each punch carrying the weight of rebellion behind it. He charges with blinding speed, fist raised high, the air distorting around him from sheer power. Every attack tells his story, each precise strike reflecting the tactical mind of a rebellion leader. The fight demands absolute mastery. Perfect dodges, split-second weapon switches, and resource management pushed to their limits. There's no room for error, no safe spot, no moment to breathe. Just relentless, overwhelming pressure. Each death becomes its own form of defiance. A reflection of Sisyphus' philosophy that the struggle itself has meaning. And when that final blow lands after countless attempts, pure transcendent victory. Not just over one of gaming's greatest challenges, but over the very concept of giving up. P2 isn't just a test of skill. It's a thematic masterpiece that uses gameplay difficulty to reinforce its narrative about resistance, absurdism, and finding meaning in seemingly futile struggle. It's ULTRAKILL at its most challenging, but also at its most philosophically rich. Well, I hope you aren't too tired yet, as whilst we're almost done, we still have one layer left. Violence. So strap in and get ready, because Act 3 kicks off with perhaps the most varied and visually distinct layer yet. Violence represents the seventh circle of hell in Dante's Inferno, reserved for those who committed acts of violence against others, themselves, and God. ULTRAKILL interprets this brilliantly by dividing the layer into wildly different environments that each represent a different aspect of violence. The first level, Garden of Forking Paths, begins with a startling contrast to the blood-red corridors of heresy. You emerge into a blindingly white marble labyrinth, almost as bright as Discord Light mode. This is the outer edge of violence, a liminal space between hell circles that serve as a buffer zone. The name itself references Jorge Luis Borges' short story about infinite branching realities, a fitting title for a labyrinth where every path feels similar, yet subtly different. What makes this level truly unnerving is the introduction of the mannequins. These faceless humanoid figures stand in artistic poses throughout the labyrinth, completely motionless, at least initially. The game teaches you their behavior in a masterfully crafted sequence. You enter a room full of these statues, take a red skull from one, and when you turn back around, they're all facing you. Nothing quite matches the panic of realizing these things move when you're not looking, creating a constant paranoia as you navigate the marble halls. But eventually, they do start moving as ordinary enemies. However, they still retain their almost janky movements. The level's structure is ingenious. You're constantly aware of being stalked by something massive. Occasionally, you'll hear distant roars or see something large move at the edge of your vision. This creates mounting tension that pays off spectacularly when the Minotaur finally reveals itself, bursting through a wall and decimating a group of mannequins in its path. The Minotaur boss fight unfolds in multiple phases, beginning with a thrilling rail chase sequence. You board a tramcar that hurtles through the labyrinth's underbelly, while the Minotaur pursues, smashing through obstacles and spawning enemies on adjacent tracks. The scale of this beast is awe-inspiring, easily 3 times your height with a massive hammer that can crush you instantly. Its body is a disturbing fusion of stone, metal, and flesh that hints at its mysterious origins. What's particularly fascinating is that the Minotaur's terminal entry is completely redacted. This censorship, literally crossed out in red text, is a reference to Mark Z. Danielewski's novel House of Leaves, where mentions of the Minotaur are similarly struck through. This subtle literary reference adds to the creature's mystique, something so terrible that even hell itself refuses to acknowledge it. Light Up the Night, the next level, shifts gears dramatically, placing you amidst what appears to be the final war that ended humanity. The level opens with a view of distant earth movers silhouetted against the night sky, searchlights cutting through darkness while artillery fire and tracer rounds create a terrifying light show. The soundscape is particularly excellent here. Distant explosions, the rattle of gunfire, and the ominous mechanical groans of enormous war machines. This level introduces the greater machines, the Gutterman and Gutter Tank, These heavily armored enemies represent military hardware repurposed into blood-drinking machines. The Gutterman, with its casket-like shield that must be broken with the Knuckle Blaster, is particularly interesting from a lore perspective. Hidden text throughout the level suggests these machines were once piloted by humans before being converted for autonomous operation. Some still contain the remains of their original pilots, hinting at the horrific process of their creation. The level design brilliantly evokes a war-torn battlefield. Trenches, bunkers, destroyed buildings, and a clock tower that dramatically collapses when hit by artillery fire. The placement of landmines creates natural restrictions on movement, forcing you to engage with enemies rather than simply running past. It culminates in delivering a massive bomb payload through enemy territory, using an incendiary device to clear a path blocked by rubble, perfectly capturing the chaos and destructive nature of modern warfare. But the true standout has to be No Sound, No Memory, which takes place in the Wood of the Suicides. This haunting forest is immediately distinguishable by its utter darkness, requiring you to use a flashlight to navigate. As you move deeper into the woods, you begin to notice disturbing details. The trees have human faces contorted in agony embedded in their bark. These are the souls of those who committed violence against themselves, transformed into immobile trees and tortured eternally. The level introduces the eerie puppet enemy, a blood entity that can mimic other enemies you've encountered. What makes them particularly unsettling is how they only appear when you need to feed the enormous blood trees that block your progress. These massive trees have text appear when you approach them. Feed it. In a distinct font that suggests it's hell itself communicating with V1 directly. The trees must be watered with blood to bloom and open new paths, creating a macabre gardening simulator within the horror setting. The flashlight mechanic creates a tense atmosphere as you navigate the dark woods, the beam casting long shadows that seem to move when you're not looking directly at them. A lone earth mover can be seen in the distance throughout the level, foreshadowing the final confrontation of the layer. And just so you actually know what an earth mover is before the final layer, the Earth Mover is an ancient machine originally designed to reshape Earth's land and terraform the planet. According to the game's lore, these massive machines were created by humanity during their technological golden age, before their extinction. They were designed to shift continents, create mountains, or flatten terrain as needed. Their size is immense. What you fight in the game is just a portion of the complete machine, with much of it still buried underground. After humanity's extinction, many Earth Movers fell into hell along with other machines. The one you encounter in Act 3 has been dormant for an extremely long time, partially buried in Hell's landscape, until your actions as V1 disturb it. The violence layer culminates with Like Antennas to Heaven, a fitting title for such an epic confrontation. The level begins in a simple bunker, but when you exit, you find yourself face to face with an Earth Mover of truly incomprehensible scale. The mechanical behemoth dwarfs everything you've encountered thus far, so massive that you spend the entire level climbing up and through it. The battle against the Earth Mover is unlike any boss fight in the game. Rather than a traditional arena, you're navigating the exterior and interior of a colossal war machine. The first phase has you climbing its legs and back, fighting off defensive systems and smaller enemies along the way. What makes this sequence particularly impressive is the sense of scale. Looking down from the Earth Mover's back reveals just how far you've climbed, with the ground barely visible far below. Eventually, you reach a town built on the machine's back, evidence that humans once lived on these behemoths, perhaps after the surface became uninhabitable. The environmental storytelling is subtle, but powerful. Abandoned homes, a clock tower, signs in multiple languages suggesting a diverse refugee population. All of this contextualizes the Earth Movers as more than just war machines. They were humanity's last refuge before extinction. The climax comes when you breach the Earth Mover's head and battle its central brain, a pulsating mass of flesh and technology protected by rotating lasers and idols. After destroying it, a self-destruct sequence initiates, giving you limited time to escape before the entire structure explodes. The frantic dash back through the now melting interior, fighting off last-ditch defensive systems while a timer counts down in the corner of your screen, creates a perfect adrenaline-pumping finale. According to lore scattered throughout the level, the Earth Mover is responsible for the Long Night, a climate catastrophe they caused that contributed significantly to humanity's extinction. These machines, created for war, ended up destroying their creators by rendering Earth's surface uninhabitable. It's a poignant commentary on how violence ultimately consumes those who perpetrate it, fitting perfectly with the layer's thematic focus. What makes violence so impressive is how each level feels completely distinct while still maintaining thematic coherence. From the psychological horror of the mannequins, to the chaotic warfare of a battlefield, to the haunting quiet of a suicide forest, to the industrial nightmare of the Earth Mover. Each represents a different face of violence while challenging you in new ways. The layer also continues the game's incredible environmental storytelling. The Wood of the Suicides contains the souls of those who took their own lives, eternally trapped in suffering in tree form. The battlefield of Light Up the Night shows the remnants of humanity's final war, with landmarks from Earth half buried in the landscape. Even the pristine labyrinth housing the Minotaur speaks to a controlled ritualistic form of violence. A stark contrast to the chaotic battlefield or the personal tragedy of suicide. Violence represents ULTRAKILL at its most confident, willing to experiment with new mechanics, enemies, and environments, while maintaining the core gameplay that makes it special. It's a testament to Hikida's design philosophy, that even 3 acts in, the game continues to surprise and challenge in new ways. And that brings us to where ULTRAKILL currently stands, with more layers planned but not yet released. What horrors and challenges await in fraud, treachery, and beyond? If the quality of what we've seen so far is any indication, I can't wait to find out. As our journey through the circles of hell draw to a close, I find myself reflecting on what makes ULTRAKILL so much more than just another retro-inspired shooter. In a medium often content with surface-level thrills, Hikida has crafted something that resonates on a deeper level. A game that challenges not just your reflexes, but your perception of what a fast-paced FPS can achieve. There's a beautiful contradiction at ULTRAKILL's core. It's a game about a soulless machine tearing through hell, yet it contains more soul than most titles with human protagonists. Its movement is blindingly fast, yet it encourages you to slow down and appreciate the meticulous detail in each environment. Its combat is chaotic and visceral, yet there's an underlying order and purpose to every encounter. From the grime-caked industrial corridors of the Prelude to the deceptive false paradise of Limbo, from the burning golden dunes of greed to the churning waters of wrath, from the blood-soaked cathedrals of heresy to the fragmented landscapes of violence. Each layer tells its own story through architecture, enemies, and atmosphere. You can feel the weight of thousands of years of suffering and punishment in every corner of hell. What strikes me most is how the game's difficulty curve mirrors V1's descent. Each circle presents greater challenges, requiring you to master new skills and perfect old ones, just as each layer reveals more about the nature of hell itself. There's a perfect synchronicity between mechanical progression and narrative revelation that few games achieve. Gabriel's arc from righteous fury to devastating realization feels particularly poignant. His crisis of faith after your second encounter, leading to his rebellion against heaven itself, offers a surprising emotional core to a game that could have been content with mindless violence. In his journey from the judge of hell to the apostate of hate, we see reflected our own questioning of authority and searching for meaning amid chaos. In the quieter moments between battles, standing atop a golden pyramid under a blazing sun, or watching raindrops fall on the ocean Styx, or gazing up at an earth mover silhouetted against the night sky, ULTRAKILL achieves a strange, haunting beauty. These brief respites make the frenetic combat that follows all the more impactful, creating a rhythm of tension and release that keeps pulling you deeper. The journey through hell isn't just about V1's quest for blood. It's about confronting the sins of man in all their terrible forms. Each layer we've explored represents a different facet of humanity's darkness. The violence that led to our extinction, the greed that consumed our societies, the heresy that questioned divine order, the wrath that turned us against one another. V1, this bloodthirsty machine, becomes an unlikely mirror reflecting our own nature back at us as it descends through the consequences of human failings. Yet in this reflection, there's also a strange hope. In V1's relentless persistence, in Gabriel's ultimate rebellion against corrupt authority, in Sisyphus finding joy in his impossible struggle, ULTRAKILL suggests that even amid the ruins of humanity and the depths of hell itself, Purpose can be found, meaning can be created, and one can still choose to fight against the seemingly inevitable. As we wait for future acts to be released, for new layers of hell to explore and new challenges to overcome, I often find myself returning to familiar circles, not just to improve my skills or achieve better ranks, but to experience again the peculiar alchemy that transforms frustration into elation, chaos into harmony, and violence into art. ULTRAKILL reminds us that games can be simultaneously intellectual and visceral, challenging and accessible, nostalgic and innovative. It stands as proof that artistic vision and player enjoyment aren't opposing forces, but complementary aspects of a greater whole. In its pixel art blood spatters and low poly environments, ULTRAKILL has managed to create one of gaming's most compelling examinations of sin, punishment, rebellion, and redemption. It takes the simplest of premises, a blood-drinking machine in hell, and transforms it into a meditation on what it means to persist in the face of cosmic injustice. Mankind is dead, blood is fuel, hell is full, and ULTRAKILL is nothing short of extraordinary. Okay, well, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. This one is a lot longer than my last one. Thank you so much for the support on Squirrel Stapler, by the way. Just want to start with that because, you know, I was not expecting the sort of response I got from that video. Sorry if the script was a bit naff. I should have proofread it a bit more, but I didn't actually think that it would do that well, so my bad. If you did enjoy the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. It helps more than you can imagine. It helps really support the channel, boost me engagement and everything. The algorithm loves it, and I love it as well. Make sure to follow my Twitter if you want to see behind the scenes like footage or you know what I mean. And I'd just like to thank the members if I can.